Hi, this is Brandon with Portable Technology Solutions, and in this video we're going to go over how to perform a cycle count in PTS CountQwik. So before we can begin performing our cycle count, the first thing we're going to need to do is make sure that we have our locations and inventory entered. To start, we'll head to the View Locations tab on the left-hand side of the dashboard on the cloud, and we're going to click Import right here. This is going to ask us to import any files. To do so, we would just create a text document with our locations, save that, and then we can open it up and import. So we have that saved already, that location folder, so we'll select it, click Open, and before it imports, it's going to ask us a few questions about our file, whether or not it contains headers, to select delimiters, and if we want to remove any empty rows. In this case, our file doesn't contain headers. For select delimiters, we're going to click on Auto Detect, and we'll have it remove any empty rows. We can click Proceed, and from there, it's just going to ask us to assign the locations and sublocations. So on the left-hand side, we have our locations, and on the right-hand side, we have our sublocations. So to do that, we're going to go over to Select Field. We'll click on Location, and then on this right-hand side, we'll select it as sublocation. From there, we can click Import, and as you can see, it was complete with no errors, and it processed all 4 rows. From there, we can click OK, and now you can see it entered the locations into the cloud. Now, since I've entered these already, if you needed to go in and change or get rid of any of your locations, all you need to do is just go on the left-hand side, check off the locations that you want to delete. See, I have them highlighted. Just click the delete button. It's going to ask for sure. We are in this case, so we'll click OK. It says items successfully deleted, and now as you can see, we've cleared it back out and gone back to the locations that we started with. Now, to get our cycle count started, we're going to go over on the left-hand side to Manage Audits. We're going to click on that, create a new audit, enter a nickname for what we want, do test count. We're going to select the location and then the sublocation if we have one of this cycle count. And obviously now we'll change the type from full audit to cycle count. So now that that's all filled out, we can go to add our items, and we're going to import our item sheet from Excel. We will drag it over to import. As we've done before, it's going to ask if our file contains headers, what delimiters we want to select, and if we want to remove any empty rows. So in this instance, our sheet does contain headers. We'll have it auto detect the delimiters, and we will have it remove the empty rows. So now we can proceed, and as you can see, it's pulled over those items from our inventory sheet into the database. So now all we need to do is match up the headers from our sheet so that they transfer correctly over to our database. So we'll match everything up, UUID to UUID, item name to name, UPC to UPC, department to department, category to category, price to price, quantity to expected quantity. And then again, if there's a field that doesn't show up in our dropdowns, or if there's a field that we don't want to add or import, we just can select Do Not Import, and it won't import that field. As you can see, our import was complete and successful with no errors, and it processed both of the item rows over. So that's all finished. We wanted to make changes we could select and delete, but we will just move on from here and finish that. We can select our cycle count, and as you can see, it's pulled over both of the items and their expected quantities. So now, if our inventory is accurate from our sheet and that our quantities are correct, we're going to update that as by default those actual quantities will be set to 0, which will show that there's a discrepancy and a variance of however many items are in your actual inventory. So now we can move over to our mobile device with the CountQwik application. We're going to click on Cycle Count Scan. Next to select location, we will click that refresh button. It's going to sync the process and the records over. And now we can just select the location and sublocation of our cycle count. Click New Scan. We're going to log in and start a new scan here. We just performed an existing one before, but when you click New Scan, it should pull up this screen right away with the items that you had from your sheet. So now, as you can see, we can select these items. It'll tell us to select an item to scan for, select the UPCs that match, and click Finish when we're done with that item. Now, to scan those, we have two options. We can either scan automatically or do a manual count. As you can see, with an auto scan or an auto count, what you would do is scan the barcode of your item individually, and it would enter that on the scan. Whereas with a manual count, you can enter the quantity of that item that you're entering manually. This is what you would want to do if you had a very large amount of items that you couldn't feasibly scan enough times to enter correctly. So you would, in this instance, we'll update the top item to match the expected quantity with 25. We would just enter our UPC, so I'll bring that over into item number. We'll do manual count, enter the quantity as 25, and we can save that, and we'll say we're finished. So now, as you can see, that's canceled that out as everything matches now. We want to do the same thing here with our cycle count. We could do that for the second item. Bring that UPC over, paste it, enter the quantity, click Save, and click Finished. And now everything is cleared out as everything checks out and is matched with our quantities. From there, we can click Review. It'll pull up the finished items for this cycle count. And it'll show the transactions that we want to make, entering those quantities and updating those quantities. We can either add to an item if we wanted to go into an item and add anything, but in this instance, we will close out our count. It'll tell us that this is going to close out the current scan for this location and can't be undone, and if we are sure we want to go ahead, we can click Yes. It's going to log in, sync that process over, and now update those records in the database. When it's all finished, it'll take us back to the home screen, and from here, to see that our changes have been made, we'll go over here, click Refresh, and now as you can see, those quantities have been updated, and there's no more discrepancy and variance between our expected quantity and our actual quantity. And that is how to perform a cycle count in CountQwik.